The business cannot stop for your migration. The migration has to work around the business. No enterprise migration happens in a window where the business stops. There is no maintenance window large enough. There is no weekend long enough. The business is running when the migration starts, and it has to be running when the migration ends. Every day of the migration, users are creating documents, running approvals, submitting forms, and accessing content. The migration has to be designed around that reality, not in spite of it. Organizations that design migrations as if the business will pause for the duration are the ones that produce the most disruption. Coexistence and cutover are not the end of migration planning. They are the design constraints that everything else has to be built around. 3 decisions made early determine whether the business runs through the migration or is disrupted by it. First, content access during migration. While content is being moved in batches, users need to know where their current content lives. For content in the source that has not yet migrated, the source is the working environment. For content in the destination that has already migrated, the destination is the working environment. If users do not know which environment their specific content is in, they will find the document in both places and lose confidence in both. The coexistence design has to include a communication layer that tells users where to work based on the status of the content they need. This is not a communications problem. It is a design requirement. The migration system has to produce the status information that the communication layer delivers. The communication layer I have found most effective in large migrations is a migration status tracker, a simple SharePoint list or Power App that shows users the current status of their specific content. Is it in the source, in progress, or in the destination? Users can check their own content status without calling IT. The tracker is updated by the migration tooling, not manually. For a 500-person organization migrating over 4 weeks, the tracker eliminates hundreds of status inquiries from the IT help desk and gives users confidence that the process is proceeding against a known plan. Second, write-back and duplication prevention. During coexistence, when the source is still accessible, users sometimes create new documents or make changes in the source after that content has been marked for migration. Those changes do not automatically appear in the destination. Without a write-back policy, a clear, communicated rule about where new content should be created during the migration window, the organization ends up with content in both environments that is not synchronized. The migration team discovers this during batch validation and has to make decisions about which version is authoritative. The write-back policy has to be communicated before the first batch migrates, not after the first version conflict surfaces. The authoritative version decision cannot be made by the migration team. It requires the business owner of the affected content to determine which version reflects the current state of the work. In a large migration, these conversations happen reactively, after the version conflict is discovered, under time pressure, with incomplete information about which changes were made in which environment and by whom. The write-back policy communicated before migration prevents most of these conflicts from occurring. The few that occur despite the policy are resolved faster when the policy establishes clear escalation criteria. Third, cutover sequencing with business process awareness. Not all content can go offline at the same time. Cutting over a project library during a critical bid period, or a compliance archive during an audit, or a team site during a merger close creates business risk that is avoidable with sequencing. The cutover calendar has to be mapped against the business calendar before the migration starts. The dates when specific content goes from source only to destination only have to be cleared with the business owners of that content, not just scheduled by the migration team. Cutover surprises are not technical failures, they are planning failures. The 3 coexistence decisions I described, content access status during migration, write-back policy, and business calendar-aware cutover sequencing are planning work, not technical work. They require conversations with business owners before any content moves, not configuration of migration tools. Organizations that do this planning consistently produce migrations the business barely notices. The ones that skip it produce migrations that the business remembers for the wrong reasons. The planning investment is 2 to 3 days. The payoff is a cutover without a post-launch remediation sprint. The coexistence period is the most operationally complex phase of any large migration, and it is the phase with the least technical support. The tools manage the file movement. The business continuity during coexistence is managed by planning and communication. Organizations that invest in that planning before migration starts have a controlled transition. Organizations that do not have a 2 to 6 week period where users are not sure where their content lives, which version is current, and who to call when something does not work. That period is avoidable. The business calendar review is one of the most consistently overlooked steps in migration planning. I require a 90-day business calendar review from each major business unit before the migration schedule is finalized. The review surfaces deadline-sensitive periods, fiscal year end, audit windows, contract renewal periods, regulatory submission cycles, product launch windows. A SharePoint cutover that coincides with any of these is avoidable with 2 weeks of planning, and unavoidable if it is not planned until the migration is already underway. The business calendar review takes 2 hours. The alternative is discovering the conflict 3 days before a planned cutover. Content access clarity, write-back policy, business-aware cutover sequencing. These are not communication extras. They are design requirements. A migration that is technically correct but creates 2 weeks of user confusion is not a successful migration. The business disruption is the outcome measure, not the file count. The next video covers what the first rescue moves look like when a migration is already failing, what to stabilize first, and how.